All right, so the next react we got here today is from Team APS. Lost the midcore Yu-Gi-Oh player. This was a big one. Only a 10-minute video. How did Farfa make this into a 2-hour video? I have no idea how Farfa's discussion became 2 hours, but this should be a quick react. I have no idea what he says in this video. I've seen people talk about it on Twitter, but I didn't read into it because I wanted to react to it on my own stream. Make sure you like and subscribe to Paul as well. I'm going to post the description here. Josh made it 2 hours. Josh made my video 50 minutes. Yeah. I try to be concise with my points, and I don't like repeating myself. Let's just get into it.
Today, I wanted to talk about a Yu-Gi-Oh phenomenon that I've been observing a lot more in the last couple of years. It's something that I also alluded to on Twitter, but I felt like bringing it to a full discussion in a video would be a really good thing. So basically, it's the sort of loss of the mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player. And what I mean by that is this. So competitive Yu-Gi-Oh right now actually feels like it has kind of hit a bit of a fever pitch. Like, people seem to be really enjoying, grinding the competitive YCS scene more now than ever. I see a lot of videos that are, kind of these niche, nitty-gritty, getting into the...
Reacting to Josh's perspective would be more interesting. Josh's video was fucking, like, an hour long or more. I don't want to say... Because the issue is when you react to a video, it becomes longer than the source. Because you have to watch their video and pause it and speak. And I'm not sitting here for 3 hours talking about Josh's thing again. I want to hear what Paul has to say. Then if we need to have another reaction in the future, and you really want me to look at Josh's video, we can do that. But for now, I want to hear Paul's discussion, just Paul's, and then I want to voice my opinion based on what Paul says.
The highly incredible specifics of like combo lines, where to use hand traps, things like that. And people seem to be enjoying the Malice and yugioh format. And for the
it's funny. Obviously, this is a YouTube highlight. You wouldn't see this right before the Malice discussion. But on Twitch, we're reacting to this right after the Malice discussion, where we were very much angry. And if I have a bit of animosity left up in me, that's because of that. The format's definitely improved, though. I will give it that much. And I mean, I don't want to give it the tone of I hate Yu-Gi-Oh, but because I'm trying to not, but still don't like Malice. Format's better, though.
They can afford the best cards, and that's not really an issue for them. They seem to be really enjoying competitive Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and this is good. I want to be clear that I think that this is a good thing. They're having fun with competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. On the other end, you've also got a lot of people who recently have been embracing older formats. Things like GOAT and Edison format come to mind. Some people also like to play Toss or, Hat format as well. But basically these older snapshot formats. And you see it a lot, especially in content creation now. A lot more people are doing, some sort of a spin the wheel, wheeled GOAT, wheeled Edison.
It's been around for a while, though. It's popped off a lot more during COVID, the more casual stuff. I love it. So like, I'm known as a competitive player, and I wish these videos would do better on my channel. I love sealed and more random elements Yu-Gi-Oh because they're still not random. It's still a lot of skill expression. And it's why I always jump at the chance to do these videos with Sam on his channel. But it's not that new. This isn't a new thing. I think that's good as well. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm going to let him continue. I'm not sure what the point of this is.
It's kind of expanded to include things like cubes and draft as well. And again, that's really cool. Getting to sort of take a dive back into these nostalgic old Yu-Gi-Oh times is great. There tends to be a lot of sort of popular viewership among casual and nostalgic fans there. So if you're a content creator, that's great. We did our Retro Rivals series with the Retro Pack, and that was a lot of fun. And you see a lot of content from that end of the spectrum as well. But what it feels like there isn't a lot of is a lot of interest and sort of almost maybe support for the mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player, I call it. What is the mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player exactly? Well, basically, this is this player who, they've played Yu-Gi-Oh for a really long time. They play at locals most weeks. They've been to a few regionals, and they do want to win, but they also kind of want to win with their favorites. They get enthusiastic or excited about anime decks or just some of their favorite decks getting new support. And even if their favorite deck isn't like super duper YCS level viable, they still want to do the best they can with it. And they want to find content about that. They want to find places to play those decks. And what I'm basically finding is happening is that these players have been sort of neglected a little bit and are now migrating to other card games or just quitting Yu-Gi-Oh in some cases. So this past weekend, we went to Bandai Card.
So yes, there are a bunch of players like this. I don't know if they're quitting. And do they get neglected? So the problem with needing players like that is you can bunch them all up into one group, call them more casual players. But when you want to start like directing attention towards certain decks, certain communities, okay, the frame is not the most flattering, but like we're talking about like the players who like their pet decks, right? Because it gets a bit messy. All of this gets a bit messy. And like pet deck communities, how do you make content for them? You have to make content for their subgenre and their one specific deck. But for a content creator perspective, to do that properly, you have to know the deck very well. And that's a lot of effort, a lot of time. It's not that feasible. unless their specific communities make content for themselves, which is sometimes they do, like Hero community does. I think I do more than most other players do, or other content creators, where every single Wednesday I make the Let's Make a Meta series, where I go over more fun rogue casual decks. I try explore them, make them as good as possible. That is the direct purpose of that series. And my viewership is good for that compared to the rest of my channel, right? Because obviously compared to other people like DZ for Far for Sam, I have less viewers, but compared to my normal channel statistics, that series does well, right? So I don't know if I'd feel like that community is going away. Dark Arm Duels does anything? Yep, he does. He's a good one. Kira Twig as well. There's a couple of them. And oftentimes I'll use a list for inspiration because I may not know as much about a deck, and I'll look at their videos and then I may take their ideas and revamp it, right? Sounds like a more casual form where people can play their pet decks more as what they want. But if he's talking about by still keeping up at a regionals, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. But the problem is I can't make every single deck playable all the time. Me doing it once a week for various different decks obviously means in 50 weeks, the old video I made is now obsolete by nature of how Yu-Gi-Oh! And metas progress. There's limits to what you can do because it's very, very broad of a topic. Your Busted Blader deck cooks. There are many videos on my channel that are the same thing. I think Midcore isn't about specific decks, just a player who isn't as competitive as somebody not willing to spend more than 150 for a deck, but still enjoy the game, not as competitive. Yeah, exactly. Right. But if we start talking about pet decking, then, pet decker are probably like a subset of what he would call a mid-core player then. But I'm saying the pet decker specifically is hard to address in that regards. It's really hard to address. So I'm going to kind of ignore it for the rest of this because I just want to kind of set up that preface of how hard it is to appeal to those players without becoming a niche in itself. For the other players, it can be hard, but I think that's what people like me and Josh and Pac should be doing. Because competitive content only gets us so far, limited growth. And I think that we have the knowledge to be pushing casual but competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! With budget decks, with rogue decks that are still somewhat competitive. And that's really what I am trying to do. So this one feels like a bit personal to me. I'm not saying he's attacking me at all, but because this is directly what I am trying to push with my YouTube. Why are you playing in regional as a mid-core? I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I mean, it depends what we define as a mid-core player, right? Because the whole thing is that these definitions can be arbitrary and aren't like set in stone. You go with friends to have fun, yeah. You go to push yourself, see how well you can do. A bit of a challenge. Secret Rare staples like Fu and Dominance don't help mid-core players. I haven't even gotten to the argument yet, so let me hear it out.
Card Games Fest, it's basically the nationals that they have for all the different Bandai games. That's One Piece, Union Arena, Digimon, Battle Spirits, and I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Dragon Ball and Super Fusion World. And so basically, like a lot of the people that we met there were really big fans, and that was cool. And they would oftentimes tell us, you know, hey, I'm a really big fan of you guys. I don't like play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, but I still watch your content. And that's a nice compliment to hear, but it is a little bit worrying because it means that these are players who in some way or another got burned from Yu-Gi-Oh! Or just disinterested, and they migrated to a card game that they maybe feel better suits their needs. So what are these needs exactly? Well, I go to a lot of conventions as it happens, and I go to them almost, I'd say like more than I go to YCS events now. I go to, you know, your New York Comic Con, your Anime Expos, DreamCon, stuff like that. I like meeting fans and just other like card game players at these events and talking to them and getting kind of their real lived experiences with Yu-Gi-Oh! Or whatever else. Like, why did...
You don't think a mid-core goes to regional unless it's very close to where they live? I don't go to regionals unless it is in Toronto. I think that is fine. I go to tournaments in the greater Toronto area. I don't think that defines you as mid-core. I guess it depends if you're in a metro area or not, but it's a lot harder to be a mid-core player and go to regionals if you're not in a metro area, sure. But then that gets even more semantics about where you live. I don't want to deal with that.
They quit Yu-Gi-Oh? Like, why do they, you know, enjoy my content sometimes, but still like they don't really enjoy playing Yu-Gi-Oh? And some of the reasons that I oftentimes hear are things like getting priced out of the game, the power curve of the game, just kind of leaving their favorite decks behind. Maybe they quit because of pendulums or link monsters, or, you know, it's just something to do with Konami, right? There's a bunch of different things people will say about that. And I think that all those reasons are fairly valid to varying degrees. Like, this is going to, of course, you know, from person to person, people quit at different times for different reasons. I'm not saying it always falls into one of those 4 categories. It could be other reasons why somebody might quit. But I think that what Yu-Gi-Oh! Seems to kind of have really lost at the end of the day, this is just, in my opinion, you can weigh in, is it's just lost the middle ground. It feels like we are there's no longer space for the player who just wants to play. Here's an example I've been giving, Six Samurai. They recently got support in Rage of the Abyss. And it was some pretty cool support cards, right? A couple new synchros and like other things like that. And they're even gonna be getting more support cards in the next couple sets. But the thing is, Six Samurai don't fit into either of the camps that I described earlier. So basically, you know, Six Sams aren't really going to be beating Malice and Ryziel. I know that you can optimistically speak and say like, oh, well, maybe the perfect Six Samurai player can do it. Sure, cool. But I think that for the average player, it's kind of accepted and known that like Six Sams aren't going to be winning the next YCS.
You're unfavored.
Also,
for sure.
though, Six Sams can't be played in Edison format, right? These new Six Samurai cards. So if you're sort of this mid-core player and you're excited about the new support for Six Samurai, or maybe recently Madolche or something like that, what do you do? Right? Like it feels like less and less content is being made around these decks. Like you don't really see as many deck profiles. There's not really as much enthusiasm for these cards when they come out. A lot of times when people are buying Rage of the Abyss, they're looking for the most expensive cards, right? They're looking.
Sam still posts deck profiles and local vlogs for all the fun decks. And I mean, obviously Sam is like the person who I follow in footsteps a lot for in content creation, even if it's in my own style and more competitive, if it wasn't clearly shown, but I do the same thing, right? And I can't play and I don't play every single deck that's new when it comes out, but I showcase a lot of them, even the ones that are more rogue and such, and I play them, right? Like, so my problem with this, I don't know if this is really true, because like, if your locals isn't crazy competitive, which many locals aren't, I feel like you can show up with Six Sam and do fine. Yes, the more competitive a game or a region is, obviously playing the better deck will let you better results, but that will happen in any game. Better deck or better build or better whatever will always just give you an initiate favor. Like, what does Flying Lance do? I can top locals easy with Six Samurai, I feel like. I understand I'm not the average person, but if you're going to be putting time into a deck, you have to put time in. You have to understand that against meta decks, you are at an inherent disadvantage. Therefore, you have to make up for it. And the advantage to those decks is your deck doesn't rotate out, and your opponent doesn't know what you're doing as well. So there are some bonuses to playing stuff like this. I don't have a problem with these decks existing, and occasionally these decks break through in YCS top cuts, like Millennium, that had a couple YCS tops. That deck is not even close to the same level as Snake Eye or Yubel like it was last format, and nowhere close to Ryzel or Malice, but it topped. Plant Syndrome, maybe. And then as for content, maybe there's not as much content because it is easier for casuals and less work for the content creator to make more of the wheel type series and stuff. I think those have just grown where the other type of content hasn't, but it still exists. I wouldn't say it doesn't exist at all. If you're known as the hero player, your locals knows what hero does since you always play it. After a while, yes. After a bit, that does happen, obviously.
To pull a Dominus Impulse or a Multi-Army Fualos, you know, the expensive secret rare. And like, I think back and I feel
the pricing out problem is real. Konami has to find a more sustainable method of making it profitable for themselves without it being so hard for the players. And I understand you can't draw direct parallels with this game and other card games like One Piece or Pokemon because the collectible market makes up a bigger portion of those games. And what that means is they can buy more products without needing the competitive cards to be what's carrying the cost of the set. However, Konami can still do better and we know they can because they have done better in the past. I'm not trying to excuse Konami, but also Konami still has to make it profitable for themselves. It's a business. That is completely understandable. But it'd also be better for them, even if the margins drop a bit, if it meant being better for the player because more people would play, therefore the numbers and volume would go up, which I think is overall better. I think there is a lot of room for content based on these decks to be explored by the community and showcase how it can be done. People don't take the Sam profile seriously. Yeah, I mean, listen, there can always be more content, but there can always be more competitive content because there really isn't that much. You define the mid-core, someone that goes locals 3-4 times a month and makes a good meta deck to try to win locals consistently, but doesn't really care enough to be competitive. Sure. The problem is we're all a bit different, right? It's a spectrum. And as people leaving different games, it's pretty normal for players to leave games or play multiple games or rotate between games. Even I've done that. I've played One Piece. I've played Pokemon. I've played Magic. I played Vanguard even. I even tried the Star Wars game. Nothing wrong with taking a breath of fresh air or playing a little bit less Yu-Gi-Oh! To play other games as well. It's a game. A lot of fun. A lot of try different things. That's not really a problem I have. Oh, Vanguard fucking sucked. I'm not advertising Vanguard. Vanguard is ass. Must have been 11 years ago at this point. I tried one when I was like 13. Isn't a player leaving Yu-Gi-Oh! A bigger problem because it's harder for people to get into Yu-Gi-Oh? You'd think that, yet people somehow keep getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! Time after time, people get into Yu-Gi-Oh! I keep hearing new players pop up, or events growing, filling with new players, or returning players. So maybe this is a bit of optimism, but I'm not as concerned about it.
I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh's kind of always been this way to some degree. Like there's always been an expensive $100 secret rare card. So then I think, okay, what's changed now? What's different? Not
always, but also, yeah. So the point I guess he's going to get to is if they're staple. Fool Us was a big red X. Fiendsmith stuff, is so generic that it probably is an X as well, like a big no-no.
And I think what it is this sort of weird late stage Yu-Gi-Oh! I almost want to call it. That was actually a video I wanted to make as well, which is like, people aren't really opening packs to just get cards and trade them. They're opening packs specifically to get the cards they need. There's a lot more, information and knowledge out there. So like decks are optimized out the gate. Oftentimes we kind of know what the best stuff is going to be. And also there's less trading because people are not as interested in buying sealed product and opening it and then like maybe trading some of the ultra rare Mermail or Six Samurai
Culture's
cards or
changed
cards
though. That's not a Yu-Gi-Oh thing.
They just want to get their Fuwalos, get their...
I don't think trading is big in these other card games either. Trading as a culture thing has been kind of obsolete as a nature of the internet and TCG player, and I feel like that's not just a Yu-Gi-Oh thing. Maybe I'm wrong.
Impulse, and they will buy it if they need to, or if they are interested in building those other decks.
Hold on. You're an example of a new player because of Master. Getting to Yu-Gi-Oh the card game feels like a big barrier to you. Like you got Master and you want to try TCG, but it feels like a big barrier. It's not. A lot of it's just getting over the initial hump. And then the next part is getting used to the no toggles and remembering your effects on your own, but it's not that big of a deal.
And they'll just buy the singles for that online. And so there's sort of less trading going on. And like I said, the content...
By the way, I don't like trade culture. And I would rather it didn't exist. And I'm happy it didn't exist. Because oftentimes it's just used as an excuse for people to rip off people who are not knowledgeable or are kids. That is clearly not a good thing. So I don't like... So I'm sorry, I like that has become less of a thing. So I don't actually mind that trading is because fallen out of favor. I have no problem with that.
It kind of seems to be skewing more towards the hyper-casual, nostalgic end of things. So what do you do when you are just a mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player interested in these sort of middle-of-the-road decks, and there's nothing there for you? I don't want to say that it's completely hopeless. Like, I feel like there are still Yu-Gi-Tubers and stuff who are making, a deck profile for these things, or kind of combo bids for these things. I don't want to, say that that's not happening at all, or sort of discredit their work. It's just that it seems like some of the buzz around, like, lots of archetypes getting supported that I felt a few years ago, it felt visceral and tangible. It's not there anymore. And it's really tough to describe. And so that's why I'm kind of putting this discussion out there, because I think that you guys tend to have a good way with words in the comments. Sometimes people can, better, just better explain kind of like what it is that I feel like I'm seeing. And I wonder if this is something that other people are seeing at their card shops. Because it does lead to the bigger issue maybe, which is that Yu-Gi-Oh is sort of bleeding players to a lot of these Bandai games. They are oftentimes seen as more accessible. They are oftentimes a little bit more affordable. Sometimes they have like better pricing and things like that, but I think that
the only Bandai game that has made an actual like difference is One Piece.
The general thing is that the mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player feels more seen and more recognized or maybe more cared for by these Bandai games. And it could also be Magic or Lorcana or something else. I'm not saying it's only those. But
do they really though? I don't really know.
And maybe what Yu-Gi-Oh seems to be giving them. So yeah, I want people to weigh in. How do you feel about this? Do you think that this is a problem? Like, what's changing here? What's caused it? I don't want this to be one of these videos where it's like, Yu-Gi-Oh is dying, right? I'm not saying that Yu-Gi-Oh is dying or it's dead, but I think that it's a phenomenon where like Yu-Gi-Oh is changing, and I think that maybe Konami should be aware of this. Maybe they're planning something. I think that there still needs to be like a mid-power level format where somebody can play new support cards for their Sharks or their Six Sams or the Madolche or whatever, because those can't be played in Edison.
Guess who does videos with all those cards?
But like still with a power level where they're viable and don't have to deal with like, the current top tier decks. That's like one of the big things. There's other stuff too. I think the Yu-Gi-Oh could still use League system. I still think the mixed rarity system could help with kind of enthusiasm around buying sealed product. But all in all, I don't want this to be like a Yu-Gi-Oh's dying, abandon all hope, jump ship. This isn't even me, to be clear. I'm not playing any of these other new like Bandai games and stuff like that. All right, like I still just play Yu-Gi-Oh pretty much exclusively, and I still like it. I like modern Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't mind like playing it, but I just think that these are. I've heard enough testimony now that it's a little bit worrying and maybe concerning. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And I need to go now because the sunlight is just blaring at my face over here, and I don't even know how I made it through this video, but I did. So yeah, weigh in the comments. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, I don't know. Players will always rotate in and out of Yu-Gi-Oh. People can be very alarmist about it, and he's trying to say that he's not trying to be alarmist about it. So I guess I'll just kind of sit at the point that I think it's not that big of a deal. The only thing that I think is actually a problem, I don't think the content is that big of a deal, nor the support cards, the 6am. But the only problem that is true was like the rarity system and the price of cards isn't very cool. It feels outdated, it's old, it's antiquated. It's not good for many players who want to spend money. Competitive players too, we don't want to spend more money. We just will if we have to. Yu-Gi-Oh would really benefit from alternate formats. People have tried and they don't pop off. So that means the demand isn't really there. So a slightly powered down format that makes pet decks more viable with their new support, that's just Heart of the Underdogs, which some locals do. And I encourage locals to do it, to play those type of decks. The whole video boiled down to cards too expensive. I think the other arguments aren't great. The only other argument you could make is that the fact that Bandai means more competition than before. Because when there wasn't One Piece, there was Pokemon and Magic, right? Less competition, therefore you have to split up your players less. Obviously that's true, but what do you want Konami to do about that? That's not anything Konami's going to do. You want them to go to Bandai's head office and like beat them all up? Like, what? There's competition that happens. I mean, sometimes some players getting broken off or putting less time in Yu-Gi-Oh to play both games. That's okay. I don't think that's going to be a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh. Does Lorcana still think too? Yep, Lorcana as well. Lustral's the new one. Star Wars Unlimited. There's always new games. But One Piece is the only one that has felt like it has a proper foothold and held itself. Other games feel like they die too quickly or they don't really gain enough traction. Your locals tried hard at the underdog and everybody only wanted to play there and nobody wanted to play advanced. Because why would I play against Snake Eye when he can play against decks? That's strong. And I think having hard at the underdog is good. And having locals support that and supporting locals that do that is good. But there are more formats. Yeah, it's the thing. And people have to choose to play them though. You could argue Konami should be making more of a push for making that like advertised and accessible. But yeah. The thing is though, eventually if it becomes properly moderated and you have like legacy or modern and standard is what you have in Magic, you have a modern and standard equivalent in Yu-Gi-Oh with higher power levels and whatnot and different set releases, then you still get the same thing of eventually there's a best deck and that deck becomes dominant, and if the whole point is not wanting it to be hyper competitive, it's still going to be competitive. So that can't be a good reason. Master Duel should replicate TCG or OCG. No, I actually don't like that. I think I like the Master Duel's different and unique, and I like when they do releases out of order to make formats that aren't the same. Like when Ishizu cards are released separately, or cards come out already hit. I think the fact that it makes the formats not just a repeat of what we had months before is good. And that way you do have multiple formats for Yu-Gi-Oh! You can play Master Duel or TCG, or Master Duel and OCG, depending on where you live. And they aren't the same. And I did find solace in last year, where I wasn't enjoying TCG as much, that I enjoyed Master Duel a lot more. Master Duel is the place to play any deck no matter its power. Maxi helps with that. Yep, it does. Much as I hate to say it. Master Duel is my favorite out of TCG. I don't know much about OCG, but favorite out of the two of them in most ways. And it's not perfect. It has flaws, but it's better at dealing with pricing. I like the rarity. You still have a cool rarity there. I wish full arts were more accessible, but that's whatever. Or I mean, alternate arts, not full arts. Full arts were a thing. I think listen, there could be things they could be doing better. But I think overall, Master Duel gets more rights. And obviously, Master Duel coming out later than TCG means they can learn from the mistakes of both the TCG and the OCG, which is very helpful for them, for their like defense. But it's good. I like Master Duel. Master Duel right now, obviously the meta I don't love because of Tempai, but that's an entirely different discussion. Yeah, I don't know. You remember watching a Jesse Kotton stream in the chat, just absolutely roasting and shit talking his opponent's decks? Did he join a Deckless Nightmares video where the whole point is me roasting a deck? I mean, listen, obviously if I roast the deck as well, it's having fun and banter, and you watch me to learn. So if I'm roasting, it's to learn things. You are absolutely allowed to play whatever the fuck you want, whether it be bad or not, and I'll still roast you, but have fun. At the end of the day, that's what's important. I just want to make that absolutely clear. But this doesn't matter to you because I'm not like sitting across from my opponents in Master Duel making fun of them, right? Like, this is a barrier. They have no idea what I'm saying. But yes, if your deck is shit, I'm allowed to call it shit. I shouldn't have to treat you like a delicate flower. Insults are a big part of it. You post Deckless Discord server and Reddit asking some tips and give me my budget. Partner, I play low budget decks. Here's a tip. Take the shit apart and play a real deck. Okay. I mean, yes. I don't shit on, or when people give me decks, I don't just shit on it for no reason. Right? And that's why I preface with Deckless Nightmares, it'll be mean. But yeah, people think they're being funny and they're just being not fun. I don't know. I think people have like one or so negative experiences, and this happens in life in general. And that they internalize that, and that becomes their everything. And that becomes their outlook and perspective, right? So if one person shat on Ancient Gears, they then say, all YouTubers did that. If you guys have watched the channel for a bit, it's a deck I made a video on. I've played many times on stream. I like those cards. They're not bad. It's interesting though. I don't think I have anything else to add to this. So unless the chat has any points to bring up, either refuting my own or adding new ones, then I say we've gone over most of it here. I am curious though, because obviously it's important to always be receptive to feedback. If I call my opponent's deck shit in ladder, is that something you guys find annoying? Like, you're allowed to say yes, by the way. Every streamer does that. Well, it's partially because what am I supposed to say? I mostly do it when my opponent's going through a long combo that's inefficient, because you can't have dead silence on a stream. It's bad. You need to have something else. You need to have audio. You need to have stimulation. So when I need to do something, the obvious thing to point out is what's on screen. And as a player who's good, if I see something bad, then I point it out. And the best way to engage with viewers is to speak dramatically, charisma and hyperbole. And that's where insults come from, right? And obviously, I'm not trying to turn away players or be mean. You can't control chat. I don't know. If chat does it, it's a different thing. I don't know. This may be implying that just chat does it and not me. But usually this kind of implies that it's my responsibility as well. Like, I'm also talking shit about a deck. And I've done that. I definitely have. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the only game that makes you want to blurt out F-bombs. You haven't played enough games, I think. Negativity in gaming is a turn-off. People just needlessly mean to each other. There's a difference between calling out misplays and just being straight up mean about the decks. Yeah, I guess. This shit's crazy, though. The people who go to someone else's Discord, see a deck, and then shit talk it. Like, what the fuck is that? But yeah. Okay. We'll call it for this video. And remember, make sure to like and subscribe to Team APS as well. This is his second channel. APS Amplifier and Pot of Greed.